Thank you very much. Thank you so much, and it's such an honor to be here and to be invited to speak to all of you. And I suppose I come as with various different hats, really, but really as a mother and a grandmother, and somebody who's really appalled, really, and deeply worried about the deterioration in our national diet. I'm 68 years of age now, and since I was a child, and to see really the kind of food that we're living on as a nation now, and of course the obvious repercussion of that. And it's really interesting for me because anytime I meet a GP, I immediately collar them and say, I'm always fascinated by the sort of cases that are presented to them and everything. And I often ask a direct question, tell me, could you make a sort of guess at about what percentage of the medical problems that present to you are actually caused directly by the food people are eating? And I've got everything from 60 to 80% as a sort of guess, just like that. And that's just, so never less than 60%. So in other words, change your food, change your life. It's literally as simple as that. And that's easier said than done. But anyway, I just wanted to start off by reminding ourselves that all good food here, I'll go back here for a second. All good food starts... I have a roving mic as well, but I won't rove too far. But anyway, just to remind us that all good food starts in the good earth and in the soil. I mean, I know this sounds like aged hippie stuff, but I am an aged hippie. And look, here it is. This is beautiful soil. And this actually, in fact, has come from compost. Is actually humus that was made from the scraps of the food that and mixed with grass and with leaves and all sorts of things that the students on the course this time last year, the scraps from their cooking went onto the compost and made this. And this has turned now into soil, and this is what we all depend on. Every single one of us depend on the 5 or 6 inches of soil around the earth for our very, very existence. And think of how we treat the soil a lot of the time. If the minerals and if I come back another time, I want to be a soil scientist because we know a little about the soil, but my God, we know practically nothing about what's going on in the soil with the bacteria and enzymes and all that extraordinary life, which basically, that's what everything that's in the soil, the minerals and so on, if the minerals are not in the soil, they can't be in our food. So our food should be our medicine. And just to remind us of, one of the founders of the Soil Association was a wonderful woman called Lady Eve Balfour. And Lady Eve had many quotable quotes, but one of the things she reminded us, and I tell every batch of students that comes into us this, remember the health of the soil, the health of the plant, the health of the animal, and the health of the human are all connected and indivisible. So we are only as healthy as the soil that produced the food. We're only as healthy as what the animals, the meat, the quality of the meat depends on what the animals ate, and it all depends on the soil. So that's by way of introduction there. And so and on the first day at the cooking school as well, I do exactly this, and I see the students' faces and I think, oh my God, it doesn't say anything about this in the brochure, when I'm running my hands and picking up little earthworms and showing them and telling them how important this is. But I have to shock them out of thinking that food is something that comes wrapped in plastic off a supermarket shelf. I have to get them to think about how the food is produced, where it comes from, the breed, the feed, and all of the different elements of it. Anyway, but just then, to go back to a certain extent to fundamentals. So one of the things that's happened, of course, certainly in the last 2 or 3 generations, is that many of us we've let, as mothers and grandmothers, we've let 2 and 3 generations out of our houses without actually giving them the skills to feed themselves properly, basic life skills. We've concentrated to a great extent on academic skills, and even when I was educated by the lovely Dominican nuns in Wicklow, who are considered to be very visionary nuns, indeed they are, and they were encouraging us in the 60s to actually go out there and have a proper career, do medicine, do sciences, do law, and all I wanted to do was cook, and could tell I was quite a disappointment. what would you want that for, my dear? They were very careful how they put it. But anyway, but if you can cook, you're actually in control of your health. Otherwise, you have to eat in restaurants, you have to buy your food in takeouts or ready meals or whatever, and it's rarely as nutritious or as delicious as what you can make yourself. And if you can cook, it's also one of the easiest ways to win friends and influence people. And you'll never be short of friends if you can rustle up a little meal. And it's the way, it doesn't matter what, it's still the way to everybody's tummy, isn't it? And there's no question our food should be our medicine. Comes a time in life where obviously pills are what we will all need, but basically in the meantime we can't do anything about our genes. We are what we were on the moment of conception, but we sure as hell can do something about the petrol we put in the tank to keep the car going, the quality of that. And so much depends on the food we eat, our energy, our vitality, our ability to concentrate, and more we realize that also our mental health is very much connected to what we eat. And of course, there more and more has been learned now about the importance of the gut and the gut flora, something we'd kind of forgotten about. And yet many of us in our busy lives, we look after our cars and our motorbikes a heck of a lot better than we look after ourselves. We wouldn't dream of filling those with dodgy petrol or oil, yet we shovel any kind of old rubbish into ourselves, and then we're wondering why we're feeling bloated and sluggish and so on. And for most people, when we go shopping for food, the only thing that matters is price. The only thing that matters is price. There are lots of people who really don't have an option, but there are many of us who actually do have an option to pay a little more. And never before in history have we spent such a small proportion of our income on food in real terms. I mean, the thing that's such an extraordinarily important to every aspect of our lives. Somehow we've been brainwashed into thinking that food should be fast, cheap, and easy. The truth is that very few people connect the food they eat with how they feel. And again, I repeat, our food should definitely be our medicine. I was brought up with the concept, and I'm the eldest of 9 children, and I was brought up with the concept that if you didn't put the money, my mother always felt, and the effort into the food on the table, you'd give it to the doctor or the chemist. Now, I'm not trying to make you do you guys out of business, but from what I hear, you're busy enough, basically. And at present, there's no question we're sleepwalking into a major crisis. We're simply not paying the farmers and food producers enough to produce nourishing, wholesome food. I don't know how many of you even have, I know many people in this room will be urban, but basically you will have farming connections. You will know that basically there is a real crisis. And what gives us the right, anyway, to expect people to produce food below an economic level for us? It can't continue. There's no other profession where people are expected to go on continuously producing food for less than it costs. And that's the reality for a lot of farmers and food producers, fishermen, etc. The consequences of this assumption will be a total disaster. Cheap food is a myth in health terms, in socioeconomic terms. It's a disaster for the environment as well. And then real cooking in a kitchen, it creates a comforting, warm atmosphere in a home. Sitting down for a meal creates a family together. Sitting down together creates a family. And buying from your local farm or butcher creates a society. Obesity, I don't have to tell you, this is the main topic of tonight, is a worldwide problem, and it's not caused by fat, or just by fat as we were led to believe. I hope you all know that butter's good for you now after all that. What did I tell you all those years? I used to get hate mail. I wish I'd kept some of those letters. When I was on Simply Delicious programs, I got letters from people saying, don't you have any sense of responsibility? Don't you realize you should be telling us to eat low fat and not butter? Butter is bad for you. And I thought, well, I don't think so. But anyway, it took 4 decades for that to be overturned. But anyway, so I hope you know that fat is not the problem. But basically what is the problem as far as I'm concerned, this incredible rise in obesity that's terrifying all of us and governments and everything all over the world, is the fundamental change in how our food is being produced since the 1950s. Since then, farmers and food producers have been encouraged to produce the maximum amount of food at the minimum cost, pushing animals and plant and everything else beyond their natural limit, and then we have one food crisis after the other. With a few very rare exceptions, food is now being produced solely for profit, rather than what it should be produced for is to nourish all of us. And the more processed the food is, the more profit. And of course, that's tempting. So an urgent paradigm shift is needed. 1 in every 4 Irish children are overweight or obese. And you know all the statistics where we're going, etc. So we need to bring cooking skills back and fast. This is a very important part of the whole jigsaw. And how do we do this now that so many generations have left our houses without the basic skills to feed themselves? And for many people, anything more than slitting the top of a packet or reheating a pre-cooked meal in a microwave is a mystery. I mean, what are we like as a society to get to that point? Practical cooking classes need to be re-embedded in our curriculum, starting at kindergarten. Every school needs to have an edible school garden and as part of the national educational system. We are not properly educating our children by just educating them in academic skills, maths and algebra and all of those things, everything like that is enormously important. But my God, what good is it if you can't actually make a bit of toast for yourself? This would make a phenomenal difference if we could re-embed this back into. I want every granny and mother and uncle and aunt and everybody in the country to rise up and ask for this. This would make a phenomenal difference in a bunch of different ways. Kids would understand how food is produced. They'd eat differently, shop differently, appreciate the work that goes into producing nourishing and delicious food. I mean, there's nothing like sowing a seed, I can tell you, and watching it grow for 3 months into a carrot or a beetroot or something. To realize the work that goes into it, by God, I can tell you, when you grow something yourself, you'll eat it slowly. You want everybody to know you grew it, and you will really enjoy it, apart from the flavour and everything else. And food should be included food is something out there somewhere. It should be included in every single subject in school. History, geography, all of the languages, French, etc. In California now, they actually have embedded the food in every single subject. So if there's a history lesson, they talk about the history, food, geography, etc., etc. It's brought into it, is part of every day of our life. Why isn't it in the curriculum like that? So what are we like? In a few short decades, we've almost abandoned cooking from scratch and virtually handed the preparation of most of our meals to the multinational food industry, which, despite assurances to the contrary, can hardly be expected to have our best interests at heart. Despite what we're led to believe, obviously their loyalty is to their shareholders and so on. So it's up to us to wake up and see what's happening. Nowadays, many people know a heck of a lot more about the lives of celebrities than how their food is being produced. They're a crucially important thing. But there's a dawning realization that academic skills are not enough. We also need these survival skills. And eating has become so complicated. There is widespread confusion. I really feel so sorry for young mothers and fathers who don't know what to do. They're totally bamboozled with conflicting information. There was a time when we got our dietary advice from our mothers and our grandmothers, but nowadays, many of us rely on experts, and that could be our doctor, who, by the way, we've talked about this earlier, at this point in time, have virtually no training in nutrition. The link enormously detailed and training in all the other elements and not in nutrition. So we need to fix this. We need to get that embedded in whatever about the cooking in the schools, we need to get that embedded in the medical training. And then and actually, by the way, on the 12-week course at the moment that's at the school, I have a doctor from California who basically, he was so appalled by so many of the, and he would be not alone, of course, of the problems that were presenting to him, that he realized that so much of it to do with diet. He took 3 months out to learn actually how to cook and to understand about food so that he could go back and help his patients. And he's not the first doctor we've had on the course, and that I really give them extra hugs when they come. I'm so delighted. Or otherwise we get our nutritional advice from dietitians, from government health departments, diet books, media reports, maybe the latest finding in nutritional science. So people are completely don't know what to believe. Despite all the scientific advice, we still don't know what to eat. A new theory every couple of months, a new diet, a new superfood comes and goes, but there's one thing that's not in dispute. The so-called Western diet is causing major problems. And we can see this anywhere people have gone, even sometimes twins, and there's a big research project on twins who are in different parts of the world and looking at how they're reacting to the diet. Causing major populations who follow this diet, which normally includes lots of processed foods, which Michael Pollan calls edible food-like substances, lots of fat and sugar and refined things and grains. In fact, lots of everything except vegetables, fruit and whole grains. People invariably suffer from high rates of so-called Western diseases, and we know all about it: obesity, type 2 diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc. Whereas populations eating a more traditional diet, and there are many, generally suffer less from these diseases. Nutritional science is a very young science. It only got started less than 200 years ago. And nutritionists themselves will tell you that they don't have definitive answers and they're still figuring it out. And they'll tell you they feel there's a long way to go. Ironically, the less time we spend in the kitchen, the more time we spend talking about food and watching others cooking it on television. And many of our happiest childhood memories are connected to food, to our mummy's stew, maybe apple tart, macaroni and cheese, simple food, sitting around the kitchen table, no TV, no iPhone, etc. Good, simple, wholesome food. That's what memories are made of to a great extent. But industrial food has taken a substantial toll on our health and well-being, continues to do so. Corporations and large food manufacturers, they cook in a very different way to real people. That's why it's called food processing. And of course, they tend to use much more sugar, salt and fat, and a whole variety of novel chemical ingredients that you'd never find in your pantry, and many of them you couldn't even pronounce them, actually, to extend shelf life and to improve the product. The industrialization of food has caused a huge health crisis. Not surprisingly, the decline in home cooking and the rise in fast food consumption and closely mirrors the rise in obesity and the many chronic diseases linked to bad health. It's also undermined the shared family meal as we continue to follow the American example of grab, gobble and go, often on our own, actually, and that culture has gained momentum. But the loss of the shared meal, and that's really something worth battling for. If it's only once a week to sit down around the table, rather than standing up at the fridge at different times, the loss of the shared meal has a far greater repercussions than one might imagine at first. It used to be the bedrock of family life, the place where we chat to each other, where children learn social skills, the art of conversation, hopefully table manners, plus the importance of sharing and taking turns, and even arguing without offending or fighting. And even the loss of the shared family meal is far more serious problem for society at large than one might imagine at first. And honest to goodness, if you're only arguing, at least it's keeping the lines of communication open, which is good. And so the return to home cooking could sort out a lot of that. We'll look very quickly, because I'm sure I must be running out of time, but a few little tips on eating well, just for me. In the words of Michael Pollan, again, whose name I've already mentioned, eat food, not too much, mainly plants. Sounds simple, there's a lot there. And eat slowly, always sitting down, and no, a desk is not a table. Okay. Grow some of your own food. God, this is a life-changing, actually. A great way to encourage children to enjoy more fruit and vegetables. They'll eat anything if they help you to grow it. If you have the space, plant a vegetable garden, even if it's only a few things. Grow something at home, anything, even if it's only a few radishes, a few salad leaves in a window box. There's no greater satisfaction than growing something yourself and then cooking it. It's really something you don't know how powerful it is until you do it. Those of you who garden a little bit will know what I'm talking about. I've already talked about things. And then the other thing, and this is tougher, eliminate, and I mean every word of this, eliminate processed foods from your shopping basket altogether. There is no question they're making us sick. The whole cocktail effect of all of it, there's no research on it because it can't be done, the research on the cocktail of it. Swap high sugar drinks for freshly squeezed fresh juices, water and herb teas. And whenever you're in the when you're shopping in the supermarket, shop the outer aisles. Make a conscious attempt to shop the outer aisles where the fruit and vegetables are and healthier options are displayed. More of the foods that are pre-prepared and everything are in the centre. One of my daughters, and she hates the fact that she thinks she's slightly turning into me, is Emily said to me, she said, when I go into the supermarket, Mum, what I do is I can see her kind of almost, pursing her lips, sort of saying, I go in, I'm going determined that they're not going to get me with their marketing, basically, that I'm actually not going to fall for it. So that's quite a good way to go into the thing. A treat cupboard, it gives totally the wrong message. Imagine giving kids a treat. A treat is something, usually a candy bar or a sugar sweet or something for being good. How about that for a contradiction, a mixed message? And then eat food. That's, you might think, of course, but that's more difficult than you'd think. Food is not the same thing as food products. They're quite a different thing. And, or what Michael Pollan, again, calls edible food-like substances. Real food, preferably organic and chemical-free, wholesome, fresh, nourishing food. That's really what we're looking out for at this stage. And I would say go out of your way to find as much organic and chemical-free food as possible. Do you know something? We can't say at this stage any longer that we don't know the damage that the pesticides and herbicides and so on have been doing to us. We cannot say that any longer. So whatever happens, go out of your way to find as much chemical-free food as you can. Our bodies really need the nourishment of the food, and they don't need to be fighting against all of that as well, which is happening a lot of the time. And this is, where the heck do you get this kind of food? Now, that's one of the problems. Farmers markets are terrific if you have real farmers markets somewhere near you, but people are busy and they can't always get to them during the week and so on. And then there are about 10,000 new products every year on the shelves. So when I talk about real food, I brought up with me from Cork today a basket of food here that every single bit of this and more that I couldn't fit into the basket is grown on our farm down. It's a 100-acre organic farm down in East Cork near Shanagarry. And everything from kale and spring onions and radishes and grapes, there's greenhouse and Romanesco and potatoes and leeks and chard and every single thing like that. And so that's what I mean by real food. And later on, I'll say in a minute not to buy anything. Anyway, eat more potatoes, less pasta, many times more nutritious, inexpensive, and quick and easy to cook in a myriad of ways. What have we forgotten about the potato? But what you also want is you want to find golden wonders and Kerr's pinks and some of those lovely old varieties that we used to have, the lovely flowered potatoes. Eat around the kitchen table and make meals family time. That's what memories are made of. Sorry, a bit of repetition there. And another thing, when you're shopping, don't put this is again another Michael Pollan one. When you're shopping, a bit of advice. When you're going to put something into your basket, don't put anything into your basket that your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. And with that, I can tell you, will stop you in your tracks the next time you go. And look, let's just start at breakfast. What was the breakfast cereal that your great-grandmother would recognize? The only thing she would recognize is... And is it not still the very best breakfast, the most nutritious and so on of all? So start breakfast with porridge, and then one of the things you can definitely eliminate from your basket are all, and I mean all, the breakfast cereals. The only one I won't actually mention, there is one that's not too bad, but I won't mention things. Eat slowly. Eat slowly. It's one of the easiest ways to, well, of course, enjoy your food, but also you'll be amazed how you'll eat less, and it's a way of not piling on the pounds too much. and then pay more and eat less. So try to find, something, maybe just get better quality meat and eat less of it, better quality something and eat less of it. Look on meat as a flavouring. Eat fish at least once a week. Fish, no question about it, wonderful. Incorporate some fermented foods into our diet. Our diets are, they really are deficient in fermented foods. Yesterday I was teaching a course on fermentation. The school has been doing it for a number of years now. But it could be anything from sourdough bread. So many people can't eat bread any longer. Oh yeah, this is another thing, apart from the confusion. I mean, the extraordinary number of people who have food intolerances or outright allergies. I know sometimes people say, oh, well, some of it is imagination. Well, maybe a little bit of it is imagination, but I can tell you a heck of a lot of it isn't. And it's not very often that people are allergic to the food. They're allergic to what happens to the food when it leaves the farm or whatever. For example, milk and dairy products. We have examples of this at the school all the time, where we have a little small herd of Jersey cows, 7. And so the students who are with us, and indeed our family, I have primarily got cows, so we ourselves could drink raw milk again, and so on. So the students have the opportunity to drink raw milk from a small herd, or pasteurized organic milk. And it's incredible how so many of them who come in telling me that they have a dairy intolerance by the end of the 12 weeks, there's no longer a problem, basically. So it often can be what has been done to the product. So if you have a gluten intolerance, celiac is a different matter, that's a disease. But go and find proper sourdough bread. Sourdough bread not sourdough bread that has some yeast added, but actually proper natural sourdough. Kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut, natural yogurt, proper natural yogurt. Wonderful foods for our gut and for everything else. But yogurt, don't get me started on yogurt. Basically, yogurt, real, proper, beautiful, natural yogurt is a wonderful food. It can't be said for everything that's sold under yogurt, the name yogurt on all the shelves. Avoid foods best before or sell-by dates. Sorry about that, but yeah, think about it. None of this here has a best before date on it, okay? Well, of course, it would get, obviously, they'll wilt and so on. And by the way, the other great thing about growing something yourself is, look, for example, those radishes. If you grow something, radishes like this, you can eat the radish, of course, but you can also eat the leaves. Look, I want to start to splutter, eat the leaves, but you can eat the leaves, and it makes a wonderful soup and everything as well. I don't know if I've got a beetroot in there. I have somewhere. Look, with the beetroot, if you grow beets, you have 3 vegetables. You eat the beets, you eat the stalks. We chop them up and cook them in boiling salted water. Am I gone off the people on the... I'm just thinking of the people, there must be people out there somewhere, aren't there? So the stalks you can chop up and cook in boiling salted water and then toss them in beautiful extra virgin olive oil or something. And then, of course, the leaves you can eat in a salad, or you can cook them like spinach. So you have 3 vegetables where you would normally just have 1 if you bought it in the shops. So, and there's hundreds of examples of that. Now, at this time of the year, it's the end of the beetroot, so I wouldn't be eating those leaves at this stage. Actually, give those to the hens. And you have to have hens as well. I have to tell you, you must have hens. It makes sense on every level, because the scraps from your cooking get fed to the hens and come back as eggs a few days later. So and they also, if you have a little chicken coop on your lawn, they mow the grass for you as well. Anyway, I'm running out of time. I know I am. Now, avoid foods. Yes, eat foods you can visualize in the raw growing state. Think of all the things in your shopping basket and say, could I visualize that, the ingredients in that in their raw growing state? A lot of them you wouldn't. If it grows on a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, think first. Avoid foods you see advertised. This, again, some of this will sound terribly radical to you, but I remember I'm of an age where I was brought up to think if something had to be advertised, there was something wrong with it. So avoid foods you see advertised on TV, and certainly anything with a health claim. And I mean it. How many foods that have health claims have had to take them off because it simply didn't stand up? Avoid imitations, something that is trying to imitate something else. Margarine, or can't believe it's butter. Eat butter, for goodness sake. We can produce butter like nowhere else in the world, practically. Avoid light and low fat, the biggest con of the 20th and 21st century. And if we think low fat works, look at the statistics. And desperately serious, because basically when people were put on totally low-fat diets, basically what happened was they became nutritionally deficient. So what happens, if you only remember one single thing from my whole whatever tirade this evening, just remember two things. There's only two vitamins that are water soluble, that's B and C. All the rest are fat soluble. So unless we have a little fat in terms of in butter or lard is wonderful, or duck fat or olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, wonderful food. With the rest of our food, we can't extract all the nutrients from our food, and we need it for our brains as well. So basically, this is why the doctors were very baffled when they put people on total low-fat diets when they were obese and everything. They couldn't understand why then they were suffering from malnutrition. Of course they were suffering from malnutrition, because they couldn't extract all of the nutrients from their food. And a lot of that low-fat food and light and all the other stuff basically is nutritionally deficient, and it neither has the flavour nor the nutrients that it should have. And the other thing is it's not satisfying. So when you eat it, you feel, oh, well, that's light or low, I can eat another 3 of those. And you just don't feel, you eat one slice of fantastic bread, gorgeous brown, really good brown bread or something, and you know you've eaten something. You don't even have to think about it. You can eat 3 slices of the squishy whatever, and basically nothing happens. Nothing happens. If I was the Minister for Health, I would ban a lot of that sliced bread for the health of the nation. I just feel so strongly about the importance that bread should actually, it's a staple, particularly for poorer people. Basically, it's toast and tea or something like that, and basically it should be something that nourishes. We should not be able to try to find out what's in it. That's another one. I'll have the whole baking industry down on me tomorrow, but anyway. Nearly finished now. Avoid foods that include high fructose corn syrup. Not much worse than sugar, but it's present in a huge variety of processed foods, so by avoiding that, you eliminate many of those foods from your diet. There's no problem with fast food as long as you cook it yourself. Nothing wrong with burgers, pizzas, chips, anything, as long as you cook them yourself. And, it's back to, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Hippocrates reminded us that our food should be thy medicine. But the challenge is, where do you get nourishing food? And finally, I just want to say that we need the Department of, if we're to solve the huge and enormous problems we have coming down the line, we're in the middle of the moment, we need the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health and the Department of Education to form a virtuous triangle and to work together for the sake of the health of the nation. And let's remember, the wealth of a nation depends on the health of a nation, and the health and happiness of a nation depend on the food we eat. So much depends on dinner. And don't forget a hug for the cook. Okay.
Can I give you a hug?
Oh, okay. Thank you.